Markus, I'm so excited about this. So Markus, VP of Public Policy for Europe at Meta. Policy is a topic I'm loving at the moment because I feel there's so many opinions, divided opinions. How are we doing in Europe? Are we measuring up? Are we building the environment that we want to build? So I'm excited to be able to dive into all this with you. Why don't you first give us an overview? How does Europe measure up, especially in relation to the US and China?
Well, first, thank you for having me. And I guess everybody who's sitting on the stage must comment on the scenery here. It's just unbelievable here. I mean, we are in Europe, we are in France, which is one of the epicenters of really the ingenuity, in the creativity that we have. This is really the tech hub, or one of the big tech hubs that we have, at least in continental Europe, and it's impressive what's going on here. And just here in this place, and by the way, you need to take some credit as well for that, for the work that you do in Station F.
Thank you.
Which is very, very, very impressive. And I've just listened to this panel before, also with Mr. Mehdi and the industry representative. So there is a lot going on here, and I'm really, really proud as a European to see what's happening here. But may I, with probably as one of the last European that believes truly in the European project with a heavy heart, maybe pour also a little bit of cold water what has been said and where we currently are, because that was your question. Where are we in comparison? And if we maybe for a minute replace the applause for what we do with actually what's happening in reality. So let me say a couple of things. So very proud. France, as I said, is one of the key countries of innovative creation. In France, we have to date 31 unicorns. That is astonishing. Yeah, 31 companies, tech companies, that are worth more than €1 billion. However, that compares to the US, which has over 1,000 unicorns. So a 30th of the unicorn number of the US, a country that is 5 times bigger than France, is what we have here. And if you look forward, maybe this is just, we realize this is a blip and we're just in a fairly weak spot right now. And the way you measure where it's going is how much money does actually go into the future? How much money is spent for R&D? And again, the roughly 4 million companies that operate in France, 4 million, spend altogether about the same amount as one company does. That's actually my company. Meta spends pretty much the same amount on R&D every year, and that's going up dramatically, as all of the French companies do at the moment. And that obviously has an effect. That is where we are. So we're not where we need to be, and we are so not going where we need to be. And then the question is really, why is that? Why do we open this gap so much? And there are many, many theories for this, but I think the first one is, I really don't feel that Europe has grasped yet that we are in the middle of a growth and a productivity crisis. Yeah, and that's probably different to other places. I live in the UK. The UK has grasped that. Yeah, there is a radical shift, at least over the last 12 months, to say we need to drive innovation. We need to drive growth in the country. We have to talk to our lawmakers, to our regulators, if we actually have not just the risk protection, but also growth in mind. So I think that's really important. And then looking to the US, I think the US is, and China for that, for them it's a completely strategic imperative. There is clearly a battle going on. There is a race going on. Who has the supremacy on technology? Because the one who has supremacy of technology has supremacy, not just economically, but also when it comes to geopolitics, to defense, to politics, cultural reasons, and so on. This is fundamental, and I really feel that at the moment it's not just that the gap is there, but that we actually don't worry enough about the gap, and that we don't understand what that does to our ability to afford our way of life, our welfare state, our defense of our borders. I think that's it. And I really feel sometimes we sort of have this navel gazing. I have to maybe comment on the last panel where Mr. Mehdi said American models, I think he didn't say these words, but sort of intrinsically racist. So whatever an American developer does is, and in Europe we have to protect against it. Well, then you're really busy if you create these scare scenarios, but it's all made up. So we're still navel-gazing about the enormous risks that there are, and we're still regulating first, then innovating. And I think that's really, really sad. And I just make maybe one last number. I had all these statistics. of the gaps. There is actually one area where France is the undisputed number one. And I'm not making many friends with what I'm saying next, but I ran this through 5 of the top AI agents. The question, which country is driving the most conservative and interventionist tech policy in the world? And all of them came up with one name. Yeah, and so I'm just leaving that here to answer your question on where we currently are.
Perfect. No, that's a wake-up call. I'll say you answered that. So, and thank you for the numbers, because I think they speak for themselves. I want to go a bit more AI specific. We've talked a lot about AI guardrails, making sure that we kind of maintain the tech. Is it only going to impact big tech companies, heavy tech companies, or does it actually have greater implications?
Yeah, I mean, again, from what I said before, I think it's such a mistake to believe this is a nerd conversation, you know. A bit of more AI, maybe yes, no, what does it do? This is, as I said, not just an economic question. This is a question about the core of who we are. Can we protect the values? Can we actually protect the sovereignty if we are not participating in technology? And this goes to every single individual. Take AI. AI, the benefits are enormous of it, and I'm sure that has been discussed up and down over the last days here. But it's personal. And if you think about this, at the moment, not everybody benefits from the virtues, from the benefits of technology. So take one basic example. A European, on average, earns between 45 to 50% less than an American. That's, that's a lot, you know. We pay 2 to 5 times more for energy in Europe. So this is me, that's personal. And one of the reasons why America is doing so well is because they are embracing technology. That's one of the main differences between Europe and America. So there are real consequences for us as individuals. And I deal a lot with regulators and governments. I sort of have the impression that we are told, not me as a representative of a company, we as European citizens are told, you don't need that, you don't really want that. And that feels actually very, very patronizing in my view. So I think it's not necessarily the most conducive environment to actually be productive, to create new stuff, and so we are just held back as Europe by this approach and by this policy.
Very interesting. And there's been work to simplify. I mean, just last week there was the Digital Simplification Omnibus that was published by the European Commission. The goal is to simplify. How well do you think they achieve that?
It's absolutely the first step in the right direction. You know, just think about this. We have European legislation where the ink isn't dry on it, and we sort of have prided ourselves on AI Act, for example, you know. The reason for the AI Act was, and the pride was, we are first to regulate AI. I mean, of all things, being first to regulate doesn't seem to be the most important criteria, you know. It has an effect. We need it for this or the other, but being first is not a criteria. So I think it's psychologically very important that Europe thinks the pendulum has gone too far. We need to really reconsider this, and that's not the right way forward. But to be very honest, I don't know if you know this expression, but it feels like you move the deck chair on the Titanic before the Titanic crashes into the iceberg. I mean, that's really the best example. And I really feel this is the starting point of a discussion. This is not the end point. And you already see a lot of discontent with the omnibus proposals, not coming from somebody like me, coming from heads of state of Europe. There was a letter only 2 weeks ago sent by 19 European heads of state to the European Commission saying, guys, you have to stop this. We have to simplify. We have to take that red tape out. We are strangling ourselves with that. So don't listen to me, read this. 60 German and French companies were signing the Evian letter to say pretty much the same thing, only to be slapped down by the Commission the next day saying, you're dreaming this up, everything is wonderful. So there is obviously something that needs to be done. But one word of warning on this one. We are hopefully coming to a point where we do real simplification and we all will pat ourselves on the back how well we have done. But actually all we have done is just try to fix the sins of the past. we actually haven't laid the foundation for the future. We don't have a vision in actually how to catch up with all these regions, with the US, with China, and so on. And I think that's really problematic. And if I can give one advice, sort of reading, bedtime reading, I think it was last week that the Tony Blair Institute came out with what's sort of termed the Constitution of Competitiveness. Very, very important document that really sort of charts out what we need to do forward-looking, not just, as I said, fixing the sins of the past.
I think you're absolutely right. That's an excellent point. I know we're running low on time, so I'm going to squeeze two questions into one. I think I already know the answer to the first part, but I'm curious to know how you're going to respond. Do you feel we need to be more ambitious on a policy level in Europe to be able to develop the kind of AI innovation that we want to see? And my second question is, we've talked a lot about what's the issue. Practically, what do we need to do to fix it?
So I try to be quick. So the first thing I would say is that we have to marry the policy layer with the political layer, because the politics are not happy with where we are, the European politics. And the unhappiness, I would say, increases the further you get to the Russian border. So Eastern Europe, for example, who is aspirational, who has a real crisis, really wants change, gets a bit quieter here, France, Spain, and so on. But, I think the policy needs to hear the politics. That's the number one thing I think we need to do. The second one is what we need to do. Everybody says that, okay, we need to really deal with AI regulation, and I would say stop the AI regulation, deal with the GDPR very practically, and then stop the enormous fragmentation of the regulatory environment. I am dealing with 270 regulators in Europe. That's unbelievable. I mean, we're a big company, and we can barely do it. Anybody who wants to grow a business or wants to catch up, it's completely impossible. And then I would say the last bit is very tangible. It's even more tangible than having vision, but is a question of pride. And I am old enough. I worked in Europe. I actually worked for France Telecom at the time, and I was going around Europe to get 3G licenses, the year 2000. That was a European technology. Nokia, Ericsson were European companies. We were so proud of that. When we went to regulators, we didn't talk about the risks. We talked of how quickly can you get it to me, please. And I really think we need this pride moment again. That's what's missing. And then we have this much more proactive, wanting to live in the future attitude. And one of these things is, for example, our partnership with Luxottica and making new glasses, the new computer interface. This will be the next iPhone moment. We should be proud of this. This is European, this is us. And if we're proud of what we do, I think we unlock a lot of the reluctances, a lot of the problems that we see otherwise politically.
Incredible. Markus, this has been my favorite policy discussion of all time. So thank you very much.